All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another podcast episode. And we have a guest on the show today I'm super excited about. And I'm going to go ahead and start off by just reading her super quick bio so you get to know her a little bit. And then we're going to dive in and let her introduce herself as well. So today we are talking with Andrea Waltz. She is the co founder of Courage Crafters Incorporated and the co-author of the best-selling book Go for No, Yes is the Destination and No is How You Get There. You might have read it. I know I have read it, and it is a really popular book in especially the network marketing and direct sales industry. This is my own my own addition to her bio, so I'm super excited today. But she teaches people in virtually every business and industry how to think and feel differently about failure, rejection, and the word no to achieve their goals and dreams. So, Andrea, thank you so much for being on the show today. We're so excited to have you.
Thanks, Lindsay. I'm so glad to be with you.
Yay. So tell us just a little quick background story. I like to start every episode with that. Like, how did you get to where you are right now, to writing this book? Where did this idea come from? All of that.
Right. Yeah, it's so weird because you don't wake up one morning and just decide you're going to be an expert at failure and rejection. That just
Yeah.
does not happen, right? Um, I actually met my husband when I was working at Lens Crafters. I had just graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Criminal Justice. I wanted to be a crime scene investigator before there was even a TV show that was popular with that as the thing. And he told me a story, a Go for No story, and it's like a main story that is featured in our book. And I just developed a passion for this topic, I guess. And I just became kind of obsessed with the idea that people need to develop the courage to ask. And so eventually he asked me if I wanted to launch a company with him. He's an amazing, excellent, gifted speaker, storyteller, writer. And I said, yeah, absolutely. But I had no idea what I was doing. So we launched this company and we went out, and our main prospects were large retail organizations. And we would teach them customer service and sales and management concepts and things like that. And that's what we did. We launched a company doing training specifically for retailers. Go for No was a huge part of that. And then we eventually expanded that to businesses of all kinds, including direct selling, because, yeah, there's a ton of rejection that takes place when you are a solopreneur, when you are going out finding your own customers. It's one thing when you have a business where people are walking through the door and they're calling you, that's great. But when you're going out and you're having to show your products and services, it's a whole different deal. So that's kind of how I started.
I love that. Okay. So tell us, how did creating the company then like funnel down into exactly like, okay, we're going to write a book and it's going to be about this topic? Like, how were you seeing a lot of success with that in the companies? Were they asking more about it? How did that come to be?
Exactly. That is actually exactly what happened. Of all of the training that we were doing, of all of the concepts that we were sharing and things we were talking about, Go for No was the thing that people were gravitating towards. And one of the things that we did when we launched our business, our company in the very beginning, was we wrote a little book, even shorter than Go for No, which is actually a really short book, called Unlocking the Secrets of Retail Magic. And it was really short and simple, and it was for people who worked in a retail store, and it was a fable, and it had some really interesting concepts to it. So we said, and we knew that model worked. Writing a book was a great way to open the door to people to see if they wanted to hire us, and it was a great way to get our concepts out into the marketplace. So a few years later, as we are doing more training of Go for No and we're teaching it to different companies, we said, yeah, let's write another fable, because it's fun for us. That's what we like to do. We know people resonate with stories. And we self-published it. We were super excited. And so what self-publishing means is we did everything ourselves. That means we designed the cover ourselves. We didn't even hire a cover designer. We wrote the book. We did our own editing, and we did everything ourselves. We ordered 5,000 copies, and we thought that this book would be a huge success because people were really starting to love the ideas behind this concept. So we order all these copies, and we send out 500 copies we got online, we ordered mailing lists of vice president of sales, vice president of training of all of these big companies like insurance and Mary Kay and you name it. And we're thinking and we had an order form in there, and we're thinking they're going to flood us in with orders. They're going to order hundreds and thousands of copies for all of their salespeople. And nothing. We ended up getting one order for 50 copies from one company. That was it out of the 500. So we said, wow, this is horrible. And we spent the next 5 years basically beating our heads against the wall trying to get this book, get some traction. And this was also in the days before social media. So we're not on Facebook. We're not tweeting about this. I mean, this is just like grassroots marketing offline, basically, like handing people copies, asking people to tell other people about it. And finally in 2007, we got it on Amazon. But what happened kind of in the meantime of all that is we gave the book to this guy, and he looked at it and he took it. He called us a couple days later and he said, I ended up reading your book, and you guys have written one of the best books on sales I've ever read. And I've read a ton of sales books. And he goes, but you have the worst cover in the history of publishing. And he said, if you guys are willing to change that, I will take 5,000 copies. And we said, yes, we're willing to change this. This is great. So we hired a cover designer. We changed the cover of the book. We got a professional editor. We went through, we like cleaned it up. We made it professional, like something you'd actually get in a bookstore. And it's what it looks like today. And that really helped change everything. But finally, we didn't hit number one on Amazon's sales and selling list. We put it on in 2007. We hit that at the end of 2010. So I tell you this very long, convoluted story about the book because I think sometimes people think like, oh yeah, they wrote a book and it's just super successful. It took us 10 years from the moment we decided to publish that book ourselves to the moment we hit that number one on Amazon's list. It was 10 years. So it was an uphill battle.
That's so crazy to me because I feel like I immediately would be like a success, just because I have read it, and like that gentleman said, it was one of the best books for my mindset when I was in really building the thick of my direct sales and network marketing business. And it was such a different concept that I hadn't really heard of before. So when you're saying like people didn't order, I'm like shocked. I'm like, what? What is wrong with them?
Right. I know it was, oh my gosh, it was so deflating, but we just didn't give up. We're just like, you know what? We've got to keep going. We've got to get this in the right hands.
Well, and that's kind of the basis of your book, which is so interesting because like after you have this finished product and then you're going into like actually enacting all the things that you're teaching in your own book.
Oh, totally, 100%. Yeah.
And that's so interesting about the cover. So the cover art has that much weight, you think? In
cover art is absolutely huge. Now, our cover, I just want to tell you, was really boring, and it was red with black text, which if you know anything about like graphics, reading black text on a red background is like really hard to, like, it's very muddy. So it was just bad because we didn't know what we were doing. And everything we did back then, we were like always scraping by, and we were like, we can do this ourselves. We did the previous book ourselves. So I think the other really important lesson here is sometimes, you get criticism and it's not something I wanted to hear. I didn't want to find out about this. And I was like, but when this person called and he actually asked us if we were open-minded, and we were like, yes, of course we're open-minded. And then he gave us this feedback. So sometimes it's hard to hear that criticism and that negative feedback, but if you look for the truth in it, and sometimes there's some truth in it, then how can you get better? And you can use that.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Okay. So let's dive deeper into rejection. Tell us a little bit about why, if I'm assuming that, okay, well, tell us a little bit more about why you think people fear rejection so badly.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple things. One, where it's completely built into our DNA. We're hardwired to not want to get rejected, to not want to get thrown out. of the tribe, so to speak, and be on our own. So we're biologically wired to not be rejected. That's one huge part of it. The other big part of it, though, is, you see every now and then people who don't seem to have a problem, right? And you go like, how are they so fearless? How do they just go through all the no's and all the haters, and it just seems easy for them? The other big part of it is there is there's nature versus nurture. There is a nurture part of this, and it has to do with how you were raised, and a lot of it is society. So it's not necessarily that your parents messed up or you had some teacher, but society in general teaches people that failure is bad, that you should be embarrassed or ashamed about it. Celebrate your successes, share those, don't share your failures, hide your failures. And we look at rejection as a failure. Rejection means that, you didn't get what you want and that somebody told you no. So that is basically a failure. So there's these deeply rooted societal things that we're fighting against as well. And then when you layer on the fact that if you were raised by parents who maybe demanded, they had high expectations, so maybe you're a perfectionist. Maybe, it's either you do it, it's got to be perfect, or you're not going to do it at all. So you have that, or I see that a lot, or I see that people, they're people pleasers, which is what I was, like classic total people pleaser. You don't want to be rejected. You don't want people to reject you, because that means that they don't like you. You're unable to separate that. So everything's always got to be smooth. You can't have conflict. And if you're a people pleaser and you see rejection as conflict, then you would never put yourself in a position to have that no, to get that rejection. So there's a lot going on, Lindsay. There's like these two things. So here you have us in the 21st century. We're not going to get thrown out of any tribe to hunt and gather on our own. We do still have the societal and cultural pressures. And so you have a population that I would say 95% is pretty, afraid genuinely, whether they want to admit it and be honest about it or not, of rejection. And then you have a small percentage of people who aren't, because they've been raised and nurtured differently. Yeah. But then there's kind of this middle ground, which is, well, and this is a really important question, which is, well, then can I, if somebody's watching this and they're saying, well, I can be a perfectionist, I can be controlling, and I can be a people pleaser, can I get over my fear of rejection if I have the societal pressures and I was raised in a house where you shouldn't fail and all of that? And the answer is absolutely. It just takes a little bit of work, time, and patience to kind of reprogram your thinking around rejection. So this is the group of people I speak to. It's people who want to change, who are ready to change, who are open-minded and say, yeah, I have these issues, but I want to get better.
Okay, so say that is someone listening to the show right now.
Yes.
Where do they start? Like, what does that process look like?
Yes. What does that process look like? So the first thing, well, first of all, read the book, because that's the perfect foundation for what it is I'm talking about. Yeah. And I'll just say very succinctly that the book is, I mentioned it was a fable. The book is really a story about a guy who meets a very successful future version of himself, 10 years in the future. And this 10-year version of himself is extremely successful. And the reason he's successful is he learned the go for no philosophy. And that is to intentionally increase the number of times you hear no. We've all been taught to go for yes. And so it's kind of one of these things. It's like, Lindsay, the perfect example. I always like to give this for, people who do creative things like you with this podcast. So I reached out to you, you reached out back and said, yeah, I'd love to have you on. Well, when you have the opportunity, maybe to, let's say you were going to go after Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spanx, right, to be on your podcast, or Barbara Corcoran from Shark Tank, right? And you're pretty confident that you're just going to get a no. So in a go for yes mindset, the go for yes person would just say, well, I'm not going to email Barbara Corcoran. I'm just going to get a no. She's never going to come on my podcast. I'm not on national TV, blah, 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 right? We have all these things. In a go for no world, we say, well, just ask. because you never know what would happen. So we all have these go for no moments in our businesses and our lives where we have these opportunities to ask. And yes, some of them are complete, I mean, probably 99% chance that it's not going to happen. But when you do the activity, when you try asking and you try going for it, that does build your courage muscle. It does help you. So the process really is to begin with a no awareness. We start there. How many no's are you getting? Where are you mentally? Do you hate the word no? Are you on one side? Do you love it? And you're one of these people that's just like, oh, it's water off a duck's back and it doesn't even bother me. Or maybe you're somewhere in the middle. But pay attention to how many times you are willing to ask to do something, to pursue an opportunity and get that no, even if it might be pretty wild, like even if it might be like kind of crazy. And you have times where it's really simple. You have safe no's, like you just want to go out for you want to go to your favorite Italian place, so you ask your significant other or your husband, hey, can we go to that Italian place? That's a really good example of a safe no. You don't think to yourself, oh my gosh, if he says no, what am I going to do? Right? You just
Yeah.
go, right? You just go through it. And
Yeah.
so we want to move our thinking of how we feel with those safe no's into things that feel a little more scary. Like, I want to ask this person if she will take a look at my business, if she will join me on a Zoom call, meet me for coffee, whatever. And so how can we take those safe no's and make that mindset more of our mindset in business? So awareness really is the first step. And then the second step is jumping right in. It's just taking the
Doing
action.
it.
It's
Yes.
just doing it. It's
Mhm.
just being willing to hear no and saying, okay, I survived it. I didn't die. I'm fine, and I wish that there was some way to make it easier, like physically. And the only thing I'd like to remind people is that there's no way, because a big part of rejection is biology, for us to remove the sting. That, and we all have those spots in our body where we feel rejection. Like I feel it in my stomach.
Yeah.
Some,
I do too. I do too.
yeah, do you too? Okay. So
Yep.
you get this like gut punch almost, depending on the rejection. Like if it's really big, it feels really bad. If
Mhm.
it's sometimes there's a sting, and
Mhm.
there's research that's been done that's shown that rejection feels like physical pain. It is tied to physical pain. So it's really hard to remove that. But can we remove the sensation of that physical pain, but change our mindset simultaneously? So it's about being aware of that physicality, like, oh, I am having that sensation in my stomach that I get when I get rejected, but that's
Mhm.
just biology, and I'm not going to let that stop me. That doesn't mean that I can't be successful.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. Oh my gosh, there's just so much to like
I
as
know
you're
there's
saying
a
it, I
lot.
know, I'm like, yes, I'm a perfectionist. And then you said, like, what's the worst that can happen? Like, what's the worst they can say? And I remember my parents saying that to me growing up, which is why I think like I was right in the middle, but a little more apt to ask for things. And then if I'm told no, I'm like, oh, okay, because I was conditioned that way. I grew up that way. And that's so interesting. As you were breaking that down, I was like identifying myself and then also how that has
Yeah.
gone into my adult life.
So I can't remember who wrote about this, and I have to go back and read it again, but there was some research done, and somebody came up with this model of like there's yes families and there's no
Mhm,
families, and there was families where, to your point, where you grew up being encouraged to ask and and not shut down. And then
mhm.
you have families where it's like you just learned that that's not something that you did.
That's so
And
interesting.
right, that it's like and there's all this psychology to it. Some people think sales is begging, and that it's like beneath them and all of these things. And so they come into the world thinking, they grow into adulthood without that foundation from how they were raised, thinking that asking is bad, or that it's making you look a certain way, and it's just not something that's done. So those are some hurdles that we have to get over. That's why that reprogramming process is so important.
It's some deep work, especially for the people listening on this right now, and they're like, "I have kids, and now I'm starting to think, like, how my language and behavior is gonna affect them growing up too." Like, this can be really deep.
Yes, and can I bring up the kid thing?
Yeah, sure.
So there's a woman named Carol Dweck. I don't know if you're familiar with her, but she wrote a book called Mindset. And in her book, she's done a lot of research with children, and she talks about these two kinds of mindsets, a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. Some people might be familiar with that because it gets thrown around a lot lately.
Mhm.
And the fixed mindset is one where when we're growing up as kids, we kind of believe that our traits and what we're capable of is fixed. Like,
Mm.
um, I can't play the violin and I'm no good at it. And that's just the way it is. But you can, as opposed to having a growth mindset, which is, well, wait a minute. If I practice enough and if I pick it up every day and I play for an hour a day, I can get better. In fact, I can become maybe a concert violinist, right? With having that growth mindset. And so when it comes to children, and I would encourage anybody to read this book, Mindset, it's about encouraging kids to try and fail and not sit back and say, well, I can't do it because I'm not as fast as the other kids, or I'm not as talented, or whatever. Having that fixed mindset of traits, it's about learning. It's about learning for learning's sake, and growing through those failures, just like when we learn to ride a bike and everything else.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of the foundation as well for Go for No.
Yeah, I love that. I'm gonna start I try to do this so much. I'm a teacher as well. I'm a high school Spanish teacher. So I see this in a variety of different students, and I can
Mm,
immediately tell, basically what goes on in their home, like how they have grown up based off
yeah,
of behavior and language and how willing they are to try. So now my mind's like going like I'm like, okay, how can I incorporate this into my classroom this year? So parents, definitely. I'll try to find that book and I'll link it in the show notes too for everyone, the book Mindset, because that sounds awesome. But yeah, so much of it starts at an early age and is ingrained in us. And then it's our job to start reprogramming that if we want to be able to change.
right, right, absolutely.
So how can we, like I said, I have a lot of direct sellers, network marketers, but also a lot of people who do online businesses, Etsy, um, online teaching, like
Yeah.
tutoring, those sorts of things as well. How can they start taking these concepts and applying it to their business to see some results?
Totally. So I would encourage you to write down all of the opportunities you have with your customers to get a no, and where those moments are. I mentioned it earlier, Go for No moment. So if you're, for example, if you're selling on Etsy, you're not interacting, you're not face to face with customers, but the perfect thing is, what can you do to come up with those Go for No moments, those yes, no opportunities, where you can either increase your sales or get other things that would be really helpful for your business. So, for example, emailing back personally every single customer and saying, hey, I hope you liked, the such and such thing that you purchased. It makes such a huge difference for us to get video reviews. Would you be willing to take a picture of your item in your home and send it back to us with a little testimonial or something like that? In other words, where are the places in your business that you can ask? Now, if you're in direct sales or you're selling a product and you're face to face with somebody, you might have the opportunity. Your Go for No moment might be getting that first yes to the first product, suggestive selling, adding on additional products, which you can do online as well.
Right.
But where else in your process? So it's different for everybody. It's where in your process do you have those Go for No moments, and how can you ask enough really good specific questions so that your prospects and or your customers have those opportunities to say no to you or say yes to you. And that's really what it's about. It's increasing the number of times that you get told yes or no.
Oh,
But the key is being aware of those opportunities. So go through your process mentally and just list everything that you could possibly do. And I know it might seem like, well, I can't ask my customers 25 questions. I don't want to make them crazy.
right, right.
No, you don't. But on the other hand, if you are selling in such a way that you are recommending things based on what you know about your customer. So, for example, if you've just sold something online, you see a purchase come through and it's for a candle. Now, you could set up a system where you email that person for that product 30 days later and say, hey, how'd the candle work out? Would you like, some people love to get a second and third one now that it's been a month. Perfect example of a go for no moment, right? What things can you do and put in place to make those asks so that people are saying yes or no?
I love that because so many people do a follow-up, but don't necessarily do the ask. It's,
Don't do the
"How was your
ask.
product?" "Oh, I'm so glad you loved it." And then that's the end of the conversation. You're like, "No, we gotta find a way to keep that conversation going and keep those sales coming in."
Exactly. And I think sometimes people feel like they're being intrusive,
Mm,
or we come up with all kinds of things. I don't want to interrupt them. I don't want to be intrusive. What if they didn't like it? Then I'm going to invite conflict or something like
mhm,
that. And the thing is, you're so much better off making the ask long term in your business rather than not having these communications with your
mhm.
customers. And yes, every now and then somebody will go, yeah, actually, it was really disappointing. And you know what? Then handle it.
Right.
You are strong enough. You can handle that hard conversation, that difficult conversation that we don't want. Because I'll tell you that one, if that were to happen, then you're also going to have 99 other people who have the opportunity to say, yeah, I'll do a video testimonial, or I'll write the review for you, or I'll do whatever. Yeah, I will buy a second candle. And so all of that will pay off so greatly that it'll be worth it.
Yeah,
It's worth the perceived risk.
exactly, exactly. Um, one last thing I wanted to touch on because I think you have shown it really well in our interview even today, but the book is also set up that way, is storytelling. Storytelling, I feel like, is another thing that often gets kind of pushed to the wayside when we are writing our social media posts and we're working with our customers. How have you found that being able to tell a good story and can influence your business or your life in a positive way?
Wow, that's such a great question, and it's so true. And I think for us, it's telling stories of people who have been successful with Go for No.
Mhm.
And we all have great stories to tell, not only of our own origin of how we decided to come up with this product or service. And I'll tell you, people online can do such a better job of telling stories about themselves and the why did I choose this company's products to sell, or why did I choose to start creating this thing. Too often, I think people don't realize that people want to know the story behind it. A perfect example is I went on Etsy and bought this little stand for for my cat to eat on. It's like a raised stand for her bowls because we got a little dog and the dog was eating the cat food. And I was like, how am I going to get how can I have this really easy for the cat, but the dog is too
Can't get
too short. She can't get in. She's really, really old. So she couldn't jump even if she wanted to.
Aw.
She'd break a hip. Yeah. So
Mhm.
we got this little stand. And this person had this cool shop with all this woodworking stuff. And I'm thinking, it would make such a difference when you went on and started looking at the products to have like the origin story. Like, how did you start making products? Why do you make these products?
Yeah.
What's behind it? What's the heart of that story? And instead of just making it a commodity, because when it's a commodity, then people scroll through. And this is true even if you're selling a product related to a direct selling company where other people are selling the same thing. Why are you selling it? What's
Yeah.
different about you? You have 3 kids and you live here and you fell in love with it. whatever it is, I think that really pulls people in, and it connects them to you as a person. So it's absolutely huge, definitely part of any good business strategy.
Yeah. And I definitely think that also, I mean, obviously your strategy and the whole everything behind Go for No, but also the book Go for No makes it a little bit different because it is told in that story. It makes it
Mm.
interesting from other business books I have read that sometimes you're like, man, like this is going to be rough to get through. But, you know, if you can make it a page turner, people want to come back and they want to find out more about it and they want to read more. And the same sort of thing I definitely think can happen in your stories online too.
Yeah, yeah, and not too long too. That's
Mhm.
one of the reasons why it's short. We
Yeah.
want people to be able to look at it and go like, I can actually finish this, because as great and as exciting as it is to actually sell books, we want books read. And
Mhm.
anybody who makes any product knows that it's one thing to sell that product, but you want that product consumed, because when that product is consumed, that's when people rebuy, and that's when they tell other people. It's like if you buy the candle and you never light it, then you can never tell anybody else how great it was. So consumption is everything.
I love that. Well, Andrea, thank you so much. I've loved chatting with you today.
Yeah.
Will you let us know where we can find you? If you have more, I don't know if you have more books or not, but if you do, I'm sure we would love to read them. So please tell us all the things.
All the things. Okay. Goforno.com. And we have a fun quiz that you can come take at goforno.com/quiz. And that is a 20-question assessment. So you can measure your thoughts and feelings and mindset around failure and rejection, and pop over to Amazon if you don't have the book. Um, I'm at Go for No on all the social media, and my goal. I'm just super passionate about this because I do believe that fear of failure and rejection just holds people back from doing what they want to do, and that
Yeah.
I find that incredibly sad. It's, one thing to have someone else tell you no, but it's worse to tell yourself no.
Ooh.
That's what you really want to avoid. So that's my goal. And so if people have questions, or if you want to follow me on social media, I'm always out there trying to give some more motivation.
Awesome. Oh, motivation. Oh my
Yes.
gosh, love it. All right, guys, make sure that you check out Andrea. Go check out that quiz. I will link that in the show notes as well. And thank you again, Andrea, so much for your time.
Thanks, Lindsay. It's so great to chat with you too.
All right, bye bye.